What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my breakdown of the new Book 8 banner, which also has Rearmed Lucina. So she's an Axe Cavalier this time, and we did see this in the FEH channel, but we didn't really know about her weapon. And as we can see here, Future Sight is basically a better future vision with that swap, and she does have a lot of really good skills, which does synergize well with this kit. So Arcane Thrima is the new Arcane Axe that we have got, and it's the second one after Arcane Downfall. And just like all of the Arcane weapons, this gives you -1 special cooldown, and at start of turn, if her HP is at or above 25%, then you can inflict -6 attack and defense debuff on the closest foes and the foes that are within 2 spaces of those foes. So it's basically like a better attack defense menace, because it can also debuff the enemies that are, far away from the closest foes. So that splash debuff is actually really good for getting the consistent debuffs on multiple enemies. And then at start of combat, if your HP is at or above 25%, then you can get +5 to all of these stats in the combat. And she also has the sabotage effect built in this weapon. Now this is not the foe penalty doubler effect or the Pelagian effect, because this is similar to the wording of the sabotage status that we have seen. So what it does is it basically checks for the highest penalty on each stat on the foe and the foes in 2 spaces of that target, and then calculates each stat independently and then debuffs the opponent. So it's pretty much that, and we have seen this before on Arcane Void of Ginunga Gap. So it's pretty much just taking use of the debuffs that she can do with this weapon itself. So the synergy is really good, and then she has got full tempo built in this weapon, which allows you to completely bypass any kind of guard skills of the opponent and also disable the special acceleration skills of the opponent. And finally, if your speed is more than opponent speed, then you can have full null follow-up. So this is kind of like Arcane Lewin having full null follow-up behind speed check. So this is a really stacked arcane weapon, and I would say that this is the best arcane weapon that we've got so far, because it does have one extra effect compared to pretty much most of the arcane weapons. And this is just so much better than a lot of the arcane weapons, because it gives you the full tempo effect, which is so valuable for so many flyers and cavaliers who don't have access to the tempo skills. And it also gives you full null follow-up, which is really good. And the fact that you can get the debuffs from this skill itself is really self-sufficient, and you can just stack up even more stats with this weapon. So this weapon is kind of similar to Cyan Larce's weapon. It's a bit better version of that. And now this is going to be available on, any kind of axe unit. So I'll be making a full video going over the best users of this, and I'll be uploading that soon. So this does benefit a lot of the speedier axe units, but even slower axe units can make use of this because of the tempo effect and also the attack and defense debuff. So even though they're not going to be able to make full use of null follow-up, and even though this weapon doesn't really have a guaranteed follow-up attack for the slower units, still it's a pretty good weapon, because, even Arcane Downfall doesn't have the guaranteed follow-up attack in both phases. So yeah, this is a pretty nice weapon. And then she's got Future Sight as her assist, and this does have Future Vision 1 built in, which allows you to swap places and self-refresh. And after the use, you can grant your ally and Lucina +6 attack and speed, and the treachery status, and also a new status which gives you 40% damage reduction on foes' first attack in the player phase. So the treachery status has got amazing synergy with the visible buffs that you can get with this skill, and also the alarm skill, because it is going to be giving you the true damage. So the damage output is going to be, improved for Lucina. And then the damage reduction can help cavaliers like her, because this arcane weapon, like Arcane Devourer for example, doesn't really have any kind of damage reduction built in. So it's pretty good to have, and it's a unique support that she can provide. And it's also another visible status effect that can contribute towards the prime skill if you're running that. She also comes with attack speed Clash 4, which is a pretty nice skill on a cavalier. And then they've got speed defense Snack 4, which has got the wrong icon. So maybe we're about to get speed resistant Snack 4 soon. So yeah, Snack skill is nice with an assist like this. And just like Fallen Crom, having this kind of snack skill is going to be really helpful to inflict the sabotage status on the enemy and debuff them even further. And she does have Alarm Defense Resistance, which gives her Canto 1, which is good for the mobility, and she already buffs herself with Future Sight, so does have good synergy with the Treachery status from it. And giving out Treachery status to the other allies is also pretty good. So overall, I do think that she's an amazing Axe Cavalier, and especially as we have seen before with Fallen Crom, with Brave Crom, and just with any kind of unit with this kind of self-refreshing assist skill. It's really amazing for the action economy in something like Summoner Duels, and for Aether Raids offense it can also be helpful for the positioning, and having the swap can actually be a lot more helpful than the repositioning many times. So I do think that she's going to be aging to be pretty good because of this assist. And if it goes to show, Legendary Lucina is still pretty amazing because of Future Vision 2. So the utility itself is pretty amazing, even though she doesn't really copy the status of the allies like Brave Crom. Still, it's pretty good. And she is going to be really fast with her base 47 speed and also base 43 attack, and both of them have super boons. So she's really offensively oriented, and I really like the fact that now with Book 8 they are having these kinds of small descriptions here, which can be really helpful for many of the casual players or even the new players which are trying to get into the game, because it can be really overwhelming. And in the context of social media, there are bound to be players who discover these trailers. So it's pretty good that they're trying to do this. Still, it doesn't really give you the full context, but good for the newer players. And we do see her stats right there. And then we have got the other units from Awakening that are not rearmed. So here we have got Severa, and we did see her in the FEH channel, but we don't really know much about her weapon or even her stats. So she's a sword infantry unit, and being a Gen 8 God Sword is definitely going to be really interesting. So she's got Striving Sword as her preferred weapon, which gives her minus in special cooldown. So Godlike Reflexes becomes a 2 cooldown special, and if she's within 3 spaces of an ally, then she can get plus extra all of her stats in the combat, depending on 25% of foes' visible attack stat subtracted by 4, and this can go all the way up to 14, which is quite a lot, and at minimum this is going to be giving you plus 5 to all of these stats. So I really like this because it is within 3 spaces of an ally, which means that you can be away from your ally and avoid threats like Yune and Duasanaki, who depend on the allies within 2 spaces of a tank so that they can get the most out of their weapons. So the 3 space condition I think is really good and flexible, and she can also get the guard effect in the combat, so it does help as a tank. And then they have a really redundant text. So basically what it does is that it gives you null damage reduction. So you're going to be completely neutralizing any kind of percentage based damage reduction skills of the opponent, like Dragon Wall, Close Call, anything like that, even if you trigger Godlike Reflexes. Now, she is the first unit who can actually pierce the damage reduction by using a defensive special like Godlike Reflexes. Usually you would need some kind of damaging special to pierce through the damage reduction of the enemy through this kind of special requirement, but she can even do it with Godlike Reflexes, which does make her pretty unique. And she's basically like an anti-God Sword. So yeah, that's pretty fun, and it does allow her to even function as a good Vantage unit because of the fact that she's got Special Spiral 3 built in her weapon. So not only it can allow you to loop Godlike Reflexes really easily, but again, like I said, Vantage is also a way of using her because she pierces through the damage reduction, and she also gets a lot of stats. And having, Special Spiral 3 built in her weapon is pretty nice. And she does have attack speed finish 4, which a lot of people did guess from the FEH channel. And she comes with a tier 4 version of Shield Pulse, or at least a branch off skill, because you will need Shield Pulse 3 as a prerequisite. So Buffer 4 is going to be giving you -2 special cooldown instead of turn 1 if you have a defensive special, just like Shield Pulse, and then it pretty much becomes a dot skill where it gives you -4 speed and defense debuff on the enemy in the combat, and also gives you Phantom Speed +7, and then you can get the dodge damage reduction up to 50%, which is definitely pretty good with Godlike Reflexes. So Godlike Reflexes provides you with the unpierceable damage reduction, and it does have speed check, so having the Phantom Speed and your tier 4 slot B is, I think, really good. Severa is also really fast at base 47 speed, just like Rearmed Lucina, and she does have a speed super boon, so that is pretty important for a God Sword. And she does have 43 base attack as well, so she is going to be a really solid God Sword. There's going to be a lot of competition, but at least she can stand out a bit because of having this kind of damage reduction piercing while running Godlike Reflexes. And the next unit that we have is Laurent. So he is a colorless infantry mage, and he's the 4-star focus. So he's the first free-to-play colorless infantry mage that we have gotten in the 3-star 4-star pool, and he does have the Deer Tome. So the Deer Tome, we have seen this before on Bastion. It pretty much gives you +5 attack in combat and inflicts -5 attack and guard effect on the foe in the combat. So it's a decent weapon, but still nothing really compared to the modern weapons. And because he is a colorless infantry mage, he doesn't really have many options for the weapon. You can either take up the Vulture Tome that Nime has got, or you can run the Deer Tome. So unfortunately, he's kind of stuck there, which is a bit annoying. Maybe in like 1 or 2 years, we see more colorless units with, inheritable weapons, and then maybe they release some kind of arcane colorless tome. So that way he could be salvaged in the future with an actual good weapon. But until then, he's just gonna be sticking to the Deer Tome or the Vulture Tome. He also has Iceberg and Attack Resistance Ideal 3 and Rouse Attack Resistance 3 as his passives. So not the greatest when it comes to the passives, unfortunately, and he's a standard mage with high attack and high resistance. Wish his speed was even lower so that he could have more defenses, but they're probably going to be optimizing the free-to-play colorless mages even more in the future. And then we have got the new Book 8 OC and Ratatoskr that you can get from completing Chapter 1 of Book 8, and I definitely look forward to using her in my free-to-play guides because she's an amazing unit. So she's an Astro Mythic who can boost up your speed, and she's got her preferred weapon in World Tree Tail, and this does give her the fixed Canto too, which is really good so that she can retreat. And she does have -1 special cooldown, making Luna into a 2 cooldown special, and Gale Force into a 4 cooldown special. And at start of combat, if her HP is at or above 25%, then she can get +5 to all of her stats, and she can get even more attack and speed in the combat, depending on the number of allies that you have on your team that are at or above 40% HP. So this is a map-wide check. You don't really need to have them in a certain proximity. So it is going to be taking those allies and multiplying it by 3 and then subtracting with 9. So that way you can get extra attack and speed in the combat, which is going to be really helpful, especially in the speed creep metagame. And she can also get special charges on both enemies' attacks and her own attacks. And Gale Force is also going to be an option because you wouldn't really have to worry about meeting certain stat check to get the special charges. And then she has got 40% damage reduction on foes' first attack, including the Brave hits. So this does help her against many of the near safe tanks and units that may have a Brave weapon. So having this kind of damage reduction against Brave hits is always useful. And then she's got the standard Beast Cavalry transformation that we started to see after Aether's release. I know it does read out a bit complicated with the Y variable, but it's really not. Essentially, if you're transformed, then you can get visible +2 attack, and you debuff the opponent depending on the clash condition, like attack, defense, clash 2. And if whoever initiated moved 2 or more spaces, then you can get even more damage reduction by getting 30% damage reduction on foe's first attack. So this does stack up with the damage reduction that she's got in the base condition of the weapon. So overall, this is a pretty nice weapon and does allow her to function as a good hit and run unit with that Canto, with the special charges if you want to run her as a Gale Force unit, and does give her a decent amount of survivability with that damage reduction. And she's got Luna and then attack speed clash, which is again pretty good on a Cavalier. And we've got the tier 4 version of Beast Agility. So this removes the condition to transform, which is really nice because she's going to be able to consistently get the transformation effects from her weapon, and it inflicts -4 speed and defense debuff on the foe in the combat. And then it has a speed check for the full null follow-up effect. So the tier 3 version of Beast Agility only had half null follow-up, as you saw before on Embla, but now the tier 4 version does have a full null follow-up and also gives you true damage based on 10% of unit speed. Kinda wish that it gave like damage reduction piercing. I would have liked it a lot more, but still, I guess a little bit of extra damage doesn't really hurt. So Beast Agility is definitely going to be pretty nice on a fast unit like this. And then she's got her exclusive Slotsy skill in Mending Heart that we did see in the FEH channel. So she is able to trigger the Divine Vein Green terrain even if she acts after the Canto, and that's why having Canto in her weapon is really good. She's able to heal up 7 HP after the combat, and she also heals up 7 HP to the allies in 2 spaces of her as well. So it's a bit counterproductive if you're trying to make her as a Gale Force initiator, because the healing is going to be a bit of a detriment, especially even healing your allies. So you might push them out of the Wings of Mercy range, unless you have Wings of Mercy 4 on all of your units or something. So I kind of wish that she didn't have the healing, but I guess it is going to be helping me in the Abyssal maps. with the, self-sustain. So the healing is, good support for a tank, but does hurt the Gale Force playstyle, especially in Aether Raids offense. So she could run Gale Force and still hit and run, but it's just that, she's not going to be functioning like an initiator essentially. And then if she initiates combat, or if she's within 2 spaces of an ally, then she can get +4 to all of her stats in the combat, and also inflict the guard effect on the foe in the combat. So this is going to be giving her even more stats, and Divine Vein Green does allow you to give pretty nice utility to your teammates, especially for something like Aether Raids offense when it comes to role compression. So if she's like one of your core mythics, then you don't really need to run Gatekeeper, which is pretty nice, but I still think that Gatekeeper has got the best warp blocking. Just keep in mind that opponents with the pass skills are going to be able to still traverse through this kind of terrain and your warp blocking, but still it can be helpful to have for Aether Raids offense. And this is going to be stopping any kind of warping to the terrain and from the terrain. But setting this up in Summoner Duels is going to be a bit annoying, and it's a lot better to have something like Gatekeeper or Legendary Mirror, even though they have their own flaws. And any kind of opponent on this terrain is also going to be having the guard effect inflicted on them, so again does help the tanks on your Aether Raids offense teams, which is pretty nice for the utility. So basically she wants to support the tanks, give them the healing, the green terrain, stop the warping, which is good because we have a lot of guidance for Soaring Guidance, Rattle Catcher and everything. And then she can hit and run and pick off the units. And because of her mobility, she can pick out a lot of enemies and also get to the pots easily. So she's basically like a better Regan in a sense. And Regan is going to be getting a remix and refine in February, and hopefully it is good. So as you can see in the trailer, she can set up the terrain twice after acting with the Canto, and she does block the warping from Legendary Lincia. So that is going to be our mythic, and we do have a Grand Tour Battle unit in Validar, and he's going to be an amazing Grand Tour Battle unit because even though he's a red infantry mage, he still has a really solid weapon in Grimleal Text. So this gives him +3 resistance, and any kind of foes at start of turn that have less resistance than him in 3 rows and 3 columns centered on him are going to be inflicted with -6 defense and resistance debuff, the panic status, and the discord status. So he's just carrying out the debuffing with a lot of range, and this can of course be used with something like attack speed ploy if we get that in the future. And he can also inflict -6 attack and resistance debuff on the enemy in the combat, and also gets the guaranteed follow-up attack, which is a bit weird that he's got Brash Assault 3 in his base kit, but I guess it does help because he's a slow unit. And then finally he can get true damage depending on X. And now this is the juicy part, because this true damage is uncapped. It has no description of, the highest penalties or the highest amount of true damage that you can get out of this. So if it counts each instance on the foe and the foes within 2 spaces of those foes, then it can just stack up for a lot of true damage. So that is something that is to be tested. But basically what it does is that it counts the negative status effects on the foe and the foes in 2 spaces, and then multiplies it by 4. So it allows him to have some really good nuking. And this is good because half of the time you're going to be running into many of the follow-up negation units or null follow-up units that are going to be stopping his guaranteed follow-up attack. So at least he can nuke really hard even with 1 hit, and he's self-sufficient with the panic status and the discord status that he can inflict. And of course with his resistance you can run the tier 4 ploy skills, the tier 4 sabotage skills, so you can have even more negative status on the enemy, which are going to be helping you get even more true damage. So he seems like a really fun unit, and I really like him. Even though like he's another slow red infantry mage, but this kind of preferred weapon just makes all the difference. And then we have got the quest reward unit in Inigo, and he's also going to be a Demote unit who's going to be added into the 3-star 4-star pool once the banner is over. He's not going to be available to be summoned on this banner, and we're only going to be getting 2 5-star copies of him from the quest. But as a Gen 8 sword infantry unit, he's definitely going to be enjoying the BST, and he's pretty offensive with that 44 base attack and 45 base speed with a super boon. And he does have Null Blade Plus, which is basically the non-seasonal version of Petalfall Blade Plus, which Valentine and Hannah had got. So it's a really good weapon to have if you cannot give a unit Arcane Devourer, as it gives you +5 attack and speed in combat, and also gives you full null follow-up and +5 true damage if you've got more speed than the opponent. So pretty decent inhittable weapon, and he has got attack speed form and Wrath for his passives. So this is going to be a pretty nice Demote unit, especially if you get like another arcane sword in the future, which has even more effects compared to the other arcane weapons. And these kinds of offenses are going to be good, but trying to plus and merge him is going to be a bit tough at the moment. He's probably going to be on a banner in like 4 or 5 months, similar to how Lapis was on the Heroes with Luna banner. So it's probably going to be something similar with him. So it's best to wait until that banner so that you can plus and merge him. So that is going to be our Book 8 banner with Awakening units, and it does have 2 sparks. So if you're a big fan of them, then you can try and spark them, but keep in mind that we're going to be getting a winter banner in mid-December, and of course the legendary banner at the end of the month, and then a newer banner. So a lot of banners have been lined up, but this banner is still pretty nice with Severa and Rearmed Lucina providing amazing arcane axe. And if you're trying to plus and merge Ratatoskr, then this could be a good chance of getting some copies because it is much better odds compared to the legendary and mythic banners where she's going to be appearing after this. So let me know what you think about this banner, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to leave a like and a comment, helps tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as the amount of options Laurent has got for his weapon. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.